time out of your day to hear what we have to say, and we're glad that you're here. My name is Josh Martin, and I'm with Sureshot Media. We're the developers of Spark Plugs, and today we're going to be presenting with Lead Spend for Fall in Love with Email Hygiene, 10 Tips to Implement Now. Again, like I said, my name is Josh Martin, and I'm the lead project manager here at Sureshot Media and Marketing. And with Lead Spend, we have Craig Swerdloff. He's the co-founder and CEO. And we have Ali Swerdlow. She's the VP of Channel Sales and Marketing. And they're both with Lead Spend. For any questions you might have as we're going through today's webinar, if you wouldn't mind, please enter those into the questions window in the GoToWebinar interface, and we will hold all questions for the very end of the webinar. What you can expect today will be about 30 to 40 minutes in length. Like I said, you can enter any questions that you might have in the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll hold all of those questions for the very end. And we will also be making today's presentation available as a recording, and we will send out the link to that shortly after today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand everything off to Ali and Craig.
Well, thank you, Josh.
Sure
and
thing.
thank you, David York, for inviting us to join everybody here today. So let's get started. Excellent. So I guess to start off, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. You know, we're presenting today on email hygiene, and so we thought we'd title it "Fall in Love with Email Hygiene." And ultimately, Ali and I are going to share with you 10 tips that you can implement now to improve your email hygiene. So let's get started. So just a quick note about Lead Spend. I started the company with my co-founder, Andrew Cooper, in 2008 after spending 3 years at Return Path. And our mission is around helping marketers optimize their investment in email marketing through better data insights and through data hygiene, so that you can collect and send email to Lead Spend verified addresses. So as I mentioned, we were founded in 2008. We're based in New York, and ultimately we have a technology that identifies whether or not an email address is valid and deliverable. And clients use it either at the point of data collection, so on a registration form, or in retail or call center, or on the back end before they send mail, just to make sure that the addresses are valid. We have clients ranging from several verticals and industries, and also in varying sizes, anywhere from small business to enterprise clients. Larry, I'll hand it off to you for the first tip here.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everybody. So our first tip today is to remove a hard bounce after the first hit. I was actually recently at a conference where a presenter advised removing a hard bounce after 3 hits, and I literally cringing in my seat. So please make sure that you understand what a hard bounce is, and make sure that it is a hard bounce and not something related to your sender reputation or network connection issue. And if, in fact, it is a hard bounce, do remove it. And I know Craig's next tip correlates very nicely with this one.
Yeah, so obviously you want to remove a hard bounce after you first hit one, but you have to know the difference between a hard bounce and a soft bounce in order to do that effectively. And the problem here is that nearly every ISP or mail server or email service provider defines a hard bounce differently. So I'm going to give you a simple definition. A hard bounce means that the recipient's account doesn't exist or is no longer active. You know, typically what you'll see from the ISP or your email service provider is a message saying one of a few things. Either this is an unknown user, or no such user exists, or invalid address is one of those 3 sort of error messages that you'll see in your SMTP bounce logs. And this is very different than a soft bounce, which really could mean a number of different things, none of which are a judgment on the quality of the email address or the validity of the email address itself. An example would be if you as a sender were having reputational issues and that was causing your mail to be blocked at one of the ISPs, you would actually receive a soft bounce when trying to send mail to that ISP or to their recipient. Or if there were transient issues with the mail server. I'll give you a quick example here related to Hurricane Sandy in New York, or in the East Coast here, Northeast. A client of ours was affected by that storm, such that apparently a lot of their users, a lot of their members based here in the Northeast didn't have power or connectivity, and one of their local cable internet providers was also down for a period of 10 days after the storm. So this company had been sending mail to their users over the course of the week following Sandy, and just by standard practice, their ESP had recommended that they remove soft bounces after 4 attempts without a successful delivery. So they wound up actually removing nearly 5,000 members from their database, just simply related to transient network issues. Interestingly, their CEO was one of the 5,000 whose email addresses was removed from their database. And they only realized the problem after the CEO had signed up for something and didn't get a confirmation email. So really, really important to know the difference between a soft bounce and a hard bounce.
Okay, our third tip is to validate incoming email addresses either at the point of collection or pre-send. So point of collection could be on a landing page, a web form, an e-commerce checkout page, anywhere where you're capturing that email address. It could even be in the back end in a call center database. And pre-send would be to validate an entire file of email addresses, a whole list. LeadSpend does provide these types of validation, and we'd be more than happy to help you make sure that you're not mailing invalid or harmful email addresses.
So one of the most important things that you can do, and really easily, in terms of improving list hygiene, is really setting the expectations at the point of sign-up about what the consumer can expect to receive from you and what you will and will not do with the email address. And so perhaps the biggest sort of effect that you could have by setting better expectations at the point of sign-up is reducing complaints and ultimately increasing engagement over time. It's interesting, there was a study done, and I can share the results, but it was by Marketing Sherpa last year, and it was a study of consumers and what they see as sort of the most important benefits that they want to see when they're registering for websites. And number one on the list was that they would be much more likely to sign up to receive mail from a company if the company up front guaranteed that they would not share their address with other third-party companies. That was number one on the list. So clearly explain the benefits of registering and the value that you intend to provide through the email program. Set expectations about what the customer can expect from you as a part of it. And then obviously make sure that you deliver on that promise.
If your mail is being junked, if it's hitting that junk folder, then you should suppress inactives for a short time to get back into the inbox. We at LeadSpend recommend suppressing those inactives until you're back in that inbox. And if after that you're still hitting the junk folder, you should completely remove those inactives from your list.
So sender reputation is essentially an algorithm or a formula that the ISPs, the receivers of mail, this would be, the big ones would be Yahoo, AOL, Hotmail, and Gmail here in the U.S. Essentially, they create a score of every sender of mail, and that score is essentially a sender reputation score. And ultimately, your sender reputation score is what determines where your mail gets delivered. For example, at Gmail, ultimately your sender reputation score will determine whether your mail gets blocked completely, whether it gets delivered, but delivered into the junk folder or the spam folder, or whether they actually will deliver it to the inbox of the recipients that you're sending to. And so ultimately that metric is something we call the inbox placement rate, which is the rate at which the mail provider delivers the mail that they receive from you to their customers' inboxes. And that is determined by your sender reputation. And if you want to think about what goes into sender reputation, on one side you have engagement, Engagement can be opens, it can be clicks, it can be forward to a friend, it could be people moving your mail from the junk folder back into the inbox. All of those things go into the engagement side of the formula. And then on the other side of the formula, you have things like hard bounces, spam complaints, and spam traps as well. So make sure that you work hard to improve your sender reputation by reducing the bounces, complaints, and ultimately traps, and increasing engagement metrics.
And Craig, I'll actually jump in here real quick. Can you expound a little bit? So, what do most people do if they have a bad reputation? What are quick steps that they can take to increase that reputation over time?
Yeah, well, the key is to figure out what's causing a bad sender reputation. And so there are resources. For example, senderscore.org is a free resource that's offered by ReturnPath. You can go there and register, and it'll actually give you insight into the reputation score of any IP address on the web. And so you can see your particular IP address that you're sending mail from, what that reputation score might look like. It's representative, but it's not exactly, but it's representative of what the ISPs are looking at. And then it'll also give you some insight into what potentially is causing your sender reputation issues, whether it's hard bounces, complaints, or traps, or even low engagement. And then obviously you need to take action from there depending on the specific cause.
We recommend that you either mail to your list frequently or validate your database before you mail to it. If you're only going to be mailing around the holidays or once a quarter, you should really spend the money and have the list validated. It's really not worth the deliverability issues and those other sender reputation issues that Craig mentioned earlier.
And Allie, a quick question about that. What would be determined as frequently? How often would you guys recommend hitting a single email over time? And how many sends should you have over like a week or a month or a year?
That's a great question, Josh. It really does depend on your audience and your content. But I would think that if you're mailing at least once a month, you should be okay. But like I mentioned earlier, some folks just mail around the holidays, so that list is just sitting there for 9 to 10 months of the year, which is not doing them any good in terms of their cleanliness and hygiene issues.
Yeah, and that's great. I guess a question to kind of go off of that, do emails ever go bad? So if you have a list where you're only hitting people on certain holidays, after a certain period of time, have you guys found that those emails are no longer good?
It does happen all the time where people's emails, they expire, or people close the accounts, or they change jobs, or different things can happen with an email address. So it is best to validate your list right before you're going to mail to it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so tip number 8, hopefully this situation never arises, but you certainly want to keep the opt-in information in terms of the time and date that a particular subscriber joined your list and signed up for your newsletter, and also the IP address that they signed up from. And the reason you want to do that is, if you ever have an issue where a subscriber complains and essentially reports you as having spammed them and not having received permission to mail, it's always nice to have that information in your back pocket to demonstrate to your email service provider or even potentially the ISP or spam organization like Spamhaus or SpamCop, the specific time and date as well as the IP address of where that user's subscription came from. So again, hopefully you never have to demonstrate it, but it's always a nice insurance policy to have that information on hand.
Please beware of autocorrecting. So autocorrecting is when someone types in Yahoo with one O and your service goes through and adds that second O. That's what we consider autocorrecting. We hope that you would avoid doing that, because sometimes that kind of a typo is intentional, and thus you risk increasing complaint rates. Ideally, like we've said throughout this presentation, you'd be validating at the point of collection so that the user can self-correct a typo. If not, you'd have to throw out the address.
So this actually dovetails nicely with slide with tip number 4 that we talked about earlier in terms of setting expectations at the point of sign up. But one of the other more important things to do there is also to set expectations about the frequency of mail that the subscriber should expect to receive from you. So you see this often, you don't see this often in terms of marketers specifically telling the consumer how often they should expect mail from them. And oftentimes the consumer is surprised either by how much or how little mail they're receiving from the marketer. So we definitely recommend that you set expectations about that frequency of communication, and ultimately that you stick to it. The other thing you can do here is through a profile or a profile center, allow the user themselves to select if they'd like to change the frequency of mail they're receiving from you. And again, the purpose here is around reducing complaints and increasing engagement from your subscribers over time. So be sure to sort of set the expectations about that frequency up front.
So we know this was supposed to be 10 tips, but we just had too much to share, so we have a couple of bonus tips for you. And this first one, beware of buying email addresses. Buying data can be very problematic. It can lead to high bounce rates and high complaint rates. And you could also encounter issues with spam traps and other nefarious email addresses. So just because you bought that data does not mean that you have the subscriber's permission. So money can't buy me love, and you cannot purchase permission.
So bonus tip number 2 here, beware of social signups as a panacea for increasing registrations. And the reason we say that is 2 things. Number one, it's unclear as part of Facebook's terms of service, for example, who actually owns the email address once it's collected via Facebook Connect. In fact, it says that Facebook reserves the right in the future to rescind your right to send mail to their members, to their customers. So be very careful about using social sign-up. There's some benefits to the consumer, and therefore makes it easier for the consumer to sign up for things. But at the same time, you obviously want to make sure that in the future you won't have to contend with Facebook rescinding your rights to mail to their customers or their subscribers. So that should give you some pause. The other reason is MailChimp actually just recently did a study on social sign-in. So this is after social sign-up. This is after a user has already signed up for your service and then comes back to the website to essentially sign back in after some period of time. And a lot of marketers obviously allow for the user to use social sign-in as an alternative to just typing in their email address, username, or password. The challenge is, and what MailChimp found after doing a fairly exhaustive study of this, is that offering multiple options for signing in actually creates some confusion amongst consumers around which method of sign-up they used. And so they found that over time, the sign-in rate, the successful sign-in rate, actually decreased as a result of offering social sign-in alongside their standard username password sign-in. So again, just maybe do some testing for a particular site, see if social sign-up and social sign-in benefits you, but definitely recommend some testing there.
Greg, going back to the Facebook terms of service that you were talking about, are there things that you can do after somebody has done a social sign-up to then keep yourself from being held to those standards? Like, for example, that they can then opt in another way so that you're not then forced to no longer email them because they signed up socially?
Yeah, you could definitely do that and ask for their permission separately after registration. My guess is you probably wouldn't see a very high participation rate. But look, I mean, the idea that Facebook at some point in the future might go back to marketers who have been using Facebook Connect to register users for their own service and say, sorry, you can no longer use this email address to send commercial mail to is pretty unlikely. But they have carved out some specific use cases where they may actually rescind that right. One of those is advertising.
Thank you so much. There is our contact information in case you would like to follow up with us or reach out if you have any additional questions. And I think Josh might have some that we can address here on this call. But if your question doesn't get answered, please feel free to drop us a note, and we will get right back to you.
Great. Thanks, Allie. And let me go ahead and I'm going to switch presenters here real quick because we do have a couple of additional slides we'd like for everyone to see. All right. So if anyone does have any additional questions, go ahead and, like I said, enter those into the questions window. A couple of questions that did come up through while you guys were talking. The first is, what is an acceptable bounce back rate? Is there an acceptable rate? And if so, what would you guys say that would be?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Return Path puts out an annual study on average sort of bounce rates, complaint rates, and so forth. And across their customer base where they're monitoring bounce rates, they say the average bounce rate is about 0.17%. And so if your bounce rate is significantly higher than 0.17%, then that would be something you might want to look into.
Great, thank you. A second question, in a database, based on what you've seen, how many emails are usually bad? Is there normally a percentage of a database that you've seen that's bad? Is there a norm to that?
I don't know that there's a particular, well, so I would say if there's an average, it's probably in and around the 10% sort of range, but it really varies depending on your data collection practices. And then, as Ali mentioned before, mailing more frequently is a great way to reduce that bounce rate. So it really depends on how often you're mailing as well.
Gotcha. Okay, great. I haven't seen any additional questions come through, but like I said, if anyone has any, go ahead and send those through. I've got a couple of additional slides. So what are some things that you can do today? So after we've gone through the 10 tips and the 2 bonus tips, what can you do? What can you get off the call today and go and do? The first thing is go and check your sender score. Like Craig said, senderscore.org. You can go there, see what that is. At least that way you've got a baseline of where you're starting at. Secondly, you can review your bounce back rates on recent campaigns. If you're seeing that is above that average that Craig was talking about, that would be something that you need to look into. And thirdly, begin using a real-time email validator on your web forms. If anything, at the point of entry, when somebody is submitting a form, make sure that they're only able to enter a valid email address right then and there. It'll save you time and trouble on the back end, and that's something that we definitely suggest doing. And so we're going to do our shameless Spark plug. We do have several apps in the App Cloud for Eloqua, and our main thing is that we want to help you increase the value of your Eloqua investment. We know that everyone has spent a lot of money just to use Eloqua, and we want to help you maximize that. We offer apps that help you with data cleansing, in this case, email validation, channels, direct mail, content, and event marketing. And obviously today our highlight is email validation services through LeadSpend. That can be done real time on a web form. It can also be done after the fact for list uploads and any sales leads that may have come in, so on and so forth. As for our webinar series, we are going to be continuing that next week. Next Thursday, we're going to be talking about automating direct mail with Cloud2You. And that's going to be a great time. You'll learn a lot of tips on how to send direct mail and how you can do that directly through Eloqua. And lastly, I'd like to thank Craig and Ali for presenting today. Again, here's their information. You can also follow them at LeadSpend on Twitter. And we, again, appreciate very much that you guys would take the time out of your day to be here with us. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself, Craig, or Ali, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. Once again, we will be making the presentation available online, and we will be sending those emails shortly. Thank you very much, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Josh. Have a great day, everybody.